Let me ask you something. What if the company that finally beats Tesla doesn't come from Silicon Valley? What if it doesn't come from Detroit, Tokyo, or Stuttgart? What if it comes from a city most Americans can't even find on a map, and started out making batteries for cheap flip phones? I know. Sounds crazy. But here's what's even crazier, it's already happening. Right now, there's a Chinese company that sold more electric vehicles than Tesla in the second half of 2023. A company with over 700,000 employees. A company that builds its own batteries, its own chips, its own motors, basically its own everything. And most Americans still have no idea it exists. That company is BYD. And this is the story of how a tiny battery startup quietly built a machine that is now shaking the most powerful EV brand in the world, and what it means for you, for the auto industry, and for the future of transportation. Stick around. Because this story is wilder than you think. Let's go back to 1995. China. Shenzhen. A 29-year-old engineer named Wang Chuanfu scrapes together about $300,000, borrowed from his cousin, and starts a company in a tiny factory. No venture capital. No famous investors. No hype. Just a guy who believed he could make rechargeable batteries cheaper than the Japanese giants who dominated the market. At that time, companies like Sanyo and Sony owned the battery game. Industry experts said Wang Chuanfu was wasting his time. He didn't care. Instead of buying expensive automated equipment he couldn't afford, he broke down the manufacturing process into small steps, and hired people to do what machines would normally do. Hundreds of workers, carefully trained, doing precision tasks by hand. The result? Same quality. Half the price. Within 5 years, BYD had become one of the largest battery manufacturers in the world. They were supplying batteries to Motorola, Nokia, and other major phone brands. Most founders would have stopped there. Cashed out. Enjoyed the success. But Wang Chuanfu had a different vision. In 2003, he made a move that genuinely shocked the business world. He bought a failing Chinese car company called Qinchuan Automobile, for about $77 million. The reaction was brutal. His own investors tried to stop him. One major shareholder reportedly sold 25% of BYD stock immediately after the announcement. The logic against him seemed airtight: you make batteries, you know nothing about cars, this will destroy the company. Wang Chuanfu's response: a car is just a bunch of parts. We can learn to make parts. And that, right there, is the mindset that changes everything. Here's what BYD did that almost no one else in the world has pulled off. They decided to make everything themselves. Most car companies are actually just assembly companies. They design the car, but they buy the engines from one supplier, the electronics from another, the seats from someone else. They're basically putting together a giant puzzle made by hundreds of other companies. That's fine when things go well. But when one piece of that puzzle is late, or too expensive, or suddenly unavailable, the whole line stops. We saw this during COVID. Chip shortages shut down Ford, GM, Toyota. Plants went dark. New cars sat in lots with missing features because there weren't enough semiconductors. BYD barely flinched. Why? Because by that point, they were making their own chips. Their own batteries. Their own electric motors. Their own power electronics. Even the glass and the seats in some models. This is called vertical integration, and BYD took it further than almost any automaker in history. The crown jewel of this strategy is their battery technology, called the Blade battery. Unlike traditional lithium-ion packs, BYD's Blade battery uses a different chemistry and a radically different physical design. The cells are long and thin, like blades, and they slot together in a way that's more compact, more stable, and crucially, much safer. In one famous test, they drove a nail straight through a blade battery cell. No fire. No explosion. Just a slightly warm battery. Do that to most EV batteries and you get a very different result. By controlling the entire supply chain, from raw battery chemistry all the way to the finished car, BYD built something that's extremely hard to replicate quickly. And all of this was happening while the world was watching Tesla. In 2008, something happened that put BYD on the global radar for the first time. Warren Buffett, the most famous investor in American history, bought a 10% stake in BYD for $232 million. Now understand what this means. Buffett is not a tech guy. He's famously skeptical of industries he doesn't understand. He avoided the dot-com boom. He was slow on Amazon. He doesn't chase flashy bets. But he looked at BYD and saw something. His partner Charlie Munger, who actually pushed the deal, reportedly said Wang Chuanfu was a combination of Thomas Edison and Jack Welch. A brilliant inventor who also knew how to run a massive operation. That investment of $232 million. At its peak, it was worth over $7 billion. Still, even after the Buffett endorsement, most of the Western world shrugged. BYD was still seen as a Chinese company making Chinese cars for Chinese people. That assumption was about to become very expensive to hold. For most of the 2010s, Tesla dominated the EV conversation globally. And honestly, rightfully so. Elon Musk did something genuinely incredible. He made electric cars cool. The Model S launched in 2012 and it wasn't just a good EV, it was one of the best cars period. Fast, sleek, loaded with technology. It changed what people thought was possible. Tesla's brand became more than a car brand. It became a status symbol. A statement. A lifestyle. Meanwhile, BYD was quietly doing something different. While Tesla was building aspirational products for people who could spend $60,000 or more on a car, BYD was asking a different question: what does an electric car look like for someone with a $20,000 budget? Or $15,000? They built dozens of models. Small city cars. Family sedans. SUVs. Buses. Trucks. Forklifts. They weren't chasing one premium customer. They were chasing everyone. And then came the Seagull. The BYD Seagull is a small electric hatchback. Practical. Efficient. Surprisingly well designed. Its price in China? Around $10,000. $10,000. For a brand new electric car. When American analysts first reported on this, a lot of people in the industry had a quiet moment of panic. Because at that price point, BYD isn't just competing with Tesla. They're competing with everything. So where does this leave us right now? In 2023, BYD sold approximately 3 million vehicles, more than 1.5 million of which were fully electric. Tesla sold around 1.8 million. In Q4 of 2023, BYD actually outsold Tesla in pure electric vehicles for a single quarter, a moment that sent shockwaves through the industry. Tesla has since pushed back, cutting prices, releasing new models, leaning into its autonomous driving ambitions with full self-driving. The competition is real and ongoing. But here's what matters more than who won any single quarter: BYD has arrived. They're now selling cars in Europe, Latin America, Southeast Asia, Australia, and the Middle East. They're building factories in Hungary, Brazil, Thailand, and Mexico. The one major market they haven't cracked yet: the United States. And that's largely because of politics. Heavy tariffs make it nearly impossible for Chinese EVs to be price competitive here. The Biden administration raised tariffs on Chinese EVs to 100% in 2024. But this raises a real question America needs to sit with: are we protecting American consumers, or are we protecting American automakers from having to compete? Because right now, Americans are paying more for EVs than they need to. A car that costs $10,000 in China costs $40,000 here when you add tariffs and shipping. The people who could most benefit from affordable electric transportation, working-class Americans, are the ones being priced out. Here's what I want you to take away from this story. BYD didn't beat anyone with hype. They didn't win with a celebrity CEO or viral product launches or a devoted fanbase on social media. They won, or at least got this far, with something more boring and more powerful than all of that. Patience. Discipline. Manufacturing excellence. They spent decades getting better at making things cheaper, faster, more reliably. And by the time the world finally noticed them, the foundation was so deep it was almost impossible to replicate quickly. Wang Chuanfu started with $300,000 and a factory floor full of workers doing things by hand because he couldn't afford machines. Today, BYD is worth over $80 billion. Tesla is still the more powerful brand. Still the innovation leader in software and autonomy. This race is far from over. But the challenger is real. The challenge is serious. And the next chapter of the EV story? It's going to be one of the most competitive, most consequential business battles of our lifetime. If this video made you think, share it with someone who still believes Tesla has no real competition. And if you want to go deeper on the global EV race, the next video is right here.